Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the EFL Fantasy Podcast. My name is Angus,
And my name is Dan.
and as you can probably see or hear, there's only two of us here this evening. Jamie is off on parental responsibilities, so it's just the two of us this week. Dan, how are you?
Great. Really, a lot better game week, a lot more goals than game week one. A lot of talking points as there normally is in the championship, and as we'll see in a couple of minutes, quite a good game week. So, yeah, I'm enjoying the championship season so far.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it less so. That I was enjoying it after game week one. Game week two was more interesting, and yet in Gaffr terms, it was terrible for me. So I scored 49 points. Had Fisher in goal for one. Had Giles vice captain, which got me 9. Had Jones 3, Bree 4, Giannulis 1. Had Swift 4, McGree 2, Chair 9, Vyman 11, Obafemi 1, and Pukki captain for 4. I had no Coventry players starting, or Rotherham players starting, so I didn't join in the bench point and emergency captain fun. I was already behind, and then that started happening, and everyone was talking about all the points they were getting in, and I was just sat there like, I hate all of you so much. So not a good week for me. It's a difficult one because you listen to that team, and I'm sure you would agree. There's not much wrong with it.
No.
And so, a couple of things here and there, like having Giannulis over Aaron's didn't matter in game week one. Game week two, there's been a 10-point swing or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, didn't have time, and that didn't hurt me in game week one. It's hurt me in game week two. So it's little things like that. I have one of them. I'm looking at a very different week. I mean, it still wouldn't have been amazing, but I'm looking at a very different week just by having one of them. So it's a bit annoying, but it could be worse. It probably feels worse because it's happening in game week two as well. If it was happening in sort of game week 14, it wouldn't matter so much. But particularly now, with almost every point is so big in terms of the positional swings and whatever, it feels more impactful. But yeah, looking ahead, I've got 2 free transfers, so looking at potentially changing things up a bit, but um, not too down about it. Just wish it was slightly better. Speaking of better, when you talked to us about your game week,
Yeah. I got 87. Um, Captain was Pookie. Vice captain was originally on Victor. Had emergency Vyman, so he came in for 16. Fisher, 1 point. Jones, 3. Timon, 16. Bree, 4. Aaron's, 12. Daniel Johnson, 4. Swift, 4. I got the field points for 9. Uh, and Pritchard. Um, it's crazy that the 9 field points. He was basically my only other playing player, and you pick up 4.5 million for like 2 or 3 points, don't you? I hope they keep the clean
yeah,
sheet. And the assist is
it's
it's
yeah.
so it's not even assist really.
We'll get into it later, but if
But
you're thinking that Field is an asset because he got an assist,
yeah.
it's probably not the case.
So overall, as you said, players like Time and Aaron's and Pritchard just massively helped. When you get if you get 2 or 3 of those, you've got a really good game week. Um, Green Arrow to 111th. So really strong position, having played no boosts. But I know all too well it can dramatically change as it did last season. So I'm um, I'm going to enjoy it because it might not last.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's obviously going great for you at the moment, and like you say, those little picks as well, like Pritchard, where you sort of we were talking beforehand, and you were talking about, it's one of those where you talk it up and it goes to plan.
Yeah.
Those are always the best ones. We'll round off with the pod team. 68 points this week. It was a decent week. Unfortunately, after winning game week 1, we have lost game week 2. Finished second in game week 2. The guys from Guys on Gaffr did beat us this week. But another decent performance. I mean, we had Fisher in goal for 1, but we had Jones, we had Timon and Aarons and Bree, Swift, Chair, we got Field as well, and Campbell in as well. Jones was actually our emergency captain because we had Victor Weiss who dropped out. And then up front we had Pirro and we had Pukki captain. So 68 points with basically nothing from the captains is not too bad either. So we finished second in game week 2. We'll be back for game week 3. We'll be firing again.
What's the overall rank of the pod team?
692nd. So it's better than me or Jamie. So that's how we've done this week. But let's talk about the games that gave us those scores. First game we've got to cover is West Brom against Watford. So Dan, talk to us about this one.
Yeah, so I'll quickly go for the lineups. Dean Garner came in for Phillips, and news broke that DK's out injured again. Yeah, it happened during training. Watford were unchanged. Early on, it was all West Brom. Created 2 or 3 decent chances before Watford. Well, he scored an absolute worldie, didn't he, Sarr? Although the goalie wasn't in the net, so we'll go. It was still a great strike, but we mentioned last week that their front three is just ridiculous. It's basically a cheat code, and Sarr showing once again what a great player he is. Grant equalised on the stroke of half time, basically a great ball by Dean Garner, who looked lively throughout. Second half was basically the same. Just I can't count how many times Jed Wallace just whipped in balls, and they were just missing chances over and over again. And then Watford capitalised on a slide tackle by Townsend, and Sarr got clean through. I think he got taken down, and then probably one of the worst penalties I've ever seen. Button saved, and for the rest of it was just West Brom. So they missed 4 big chances and created XG of around 3. So they absolutely battered Watford. What I did notice is centre mids. They got completely outnumbered, the 2, because Swift was sort of dropping a bit deeper as well. So they outnumbered them 3-on-2. And their wing backs were getting completely destroyed by they were getting double teamed by the wingers, and Furlong and Townsend were supporting. So I left this game feeling really, really excited about West Brom, which might sound a bit weird after Bruce, but that attacking talent is ridiculous. I don't know what you thought about the game, Angus.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing, we can talk about David Button's positioning. Scoring from where Ismail Assar scored from is still a very impressive feat in an actual game. I've had multiple conversations about David Button's positions. Craig Cathcart with another one of these great assists, a header up to him, and Sarr scores a 50-plus yarder and Cathcart gets an assist. You love that. If you're one of the few people who owns Craig Cathcart, that's a real bonus for you. West Brom were the main takeaway. They seem to have brought in enough good attacking talent that there's only so much Steve Bruce can limit them. It's just about finishing the chances, because they were really good. They battered Watford. I think there are a few spots that Watford still aren't quite good enough, and We're recording on Wednesday night. There's been reports on Wednesday afternoon that Ismail Assar is close to a move to Leeds as well, which may further hurt them in the attack. But, there's a few places further back where they're still not good enough. I mean, you mentioned the midfield. They brought in Hamza Chowdhury on loan from Leicester. I think that will help them in there. But the defence, I think, is still a little bit suspect as well in terms of the personnel in there. So I sense they might not be done. Particularly if Sarr goes and potentially Dennis goes, then they really won't be done. But yeah, West Brom, I think, are the main takeaway. From a Gaffr point of view, you spoke about Jed Wallace. He's cleaned up the bonus again. Swift in the bonus again. Carlin Grant with the chances he's getting, looks an option. If he can stick enough of them away, he'll be an option.
Well, also with DK out, he's going to play centre
Yeah,
forward now, surely.
yeah. And then Diangana looked. I'm not sure he looked as good as we hoped, like going into last season, but he certainly looked better than last season's Grady Diangana in this game, and
If
he
he stays
certainly
in,
looked better than Matt Phillips as well.
yeah, and if he stays in the side, then he's 7.5, and
Yeah,
that's could be a great price, but it's probably a bit too early to move for Dean Garner, I think.
yeah. I think Diangana it's tough, but there's potentially an option there. I think.
What do you
Um,
think about the fullbacks? Because they were bombing forward, Furlong and Townsend.
I'm not sure. I think they're going to be good enough defensively that you could potentially go with one of them. But the players you want are still those attacking players, which is the problem in terms. I know it's going to be very very difficult to mentally to go to like triple West Brom attack.
Even
Um,
double after last year for
yeah,
me.
but I mean I think they're an option. They're not one that I'm looking at. I mean it's one of those again. The problem with the defense is there's so many, even just of these fullbacks, wingbacks from different teams that we want that it's sort of like, are they one that you're really going to go for? And maybe you will, but it becomes slightly more difficult to go for them, I think, because of the just wide range of options there. Um,
But also because of the way of the scoring system, key passes are such a big thing. With those creative players like we mentioned, Dean Garner, Swift, and Wallace, they're going to have to probably get attacking returns
yeah,
for them to even get in the bonus, I think. Whereas other teams like other players like Giles, Madsen, I think they'll easily pick up the bonus.
yeah, exactly. Um, I think we've had a question about Watford, so we'll cover that later in terms of the timing with them. But the one thing I would say in terms of the timing of jumping on them is just look at the fact that we've only heard about the Ismail Assar Leeds story today, and it sounds like it's close. So
Yeah.
that's the sort of risk you run if you are looking at them. Um, but we'll move on to our next game, which is QPR 3, Middlesbrough 2. So Dan, start us off on this one.
Yeah, so 3-2 QPR. Lineups, Dunn, Willock, and Amos came in for Burrow. Force started over Akpom. McNair wasn't on the squad, but he was on the bench. Um, there's quite a few goals. We've briefly mentioned the Willock one, just Maisie dribble and smacked it in, assist Field. And then there was just two set pieces for QPR that Middlesbrough were terrible at. Dunn scored from a chair corner. Stefan, terrible mistake in goal. Is he worse than Lumley? Debatable. Um, Second one, Cross and Dykes heads it from a Johansson assist. Just just something I didn't expect from Borough. Like the basics from set pieces was really terrible. Um, And then Middlesbrough got a couple of goals back. Crooks with a goal and an assist. Assist from Giles and a goal from Force. Force scoring a goal, which I think he could score quite a lot of. As we mentioned last episode, if Force has that one more chance at 1-0 against West Brom, he probably goes 2-0 and they probably don't draw the game. And then Lenihan got sent off last man. Um, yeah, it was just a bit of a disaster from Middlesbrough. They have signed a striker today. Is it Hoppy?
Hoppy, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know too much about him. I don't know if you know anything, Angus.
So I know he was highly thought of when he moved to Schalke. He hasn't really had much of an opportunity. He played for, I think he played 23 games for a very poor Schalke team. I think it was in the 2021 season. And got 6 goals, and then he moved to Real Mallorca in search of sort of top flight minutes because Schalke had been relegated, and even then he'd been limited in terms of his starts, and he got injured, and I think he only played 5 games for Real Mallorca. So it'd be interesting to see because he hasn't played sort of a great deal of first team football still. He's played 6 times for the US national team as well. And we've seen some of the forward options they do have. So, I mean, there's something to be said for getting in that team, but I think it's still a bit of a wait and see on him. But I know they've been pursuing him for a while. But in terms of the game, like you said, I think Force, showed the sort of reason that they brought him in. But the first half was just a disaster. That Willock run, I mean, there's not a great tackle from, I think it's Jones when he starts the run. Dijksteel defended him absolutely terribly. Willock is great running with the ball, but Dijksteel's defending left a lot to be desired. And I said he got hooked at half time for McNair. And
Yeah,
I
he
think the
did.
defending of that goal played a big role in him getting hooked at that point. For what it's worth, Wilder has talked about seeing McNair as a right centre back and that he's competing with Dijksteel. So that might well be one to keep an eye on this weekend, who's in the lineup. Because I think if McNair gets in there, that could be interesting. Like you say, Stefan's just had a mare for the second goal. And then the third goal, the marking is atrocious. I think it was supposed to be Dijksteel again on Dykes. So not a great half for him. Crook's obviously got the consolation, which I think he will chip in with a few goals. I think if people are looking for midfielders in that sort of price range, yes, he will pick up bookings, but he will pick up goals as well, particularly with his aerial ability. And then the Force goal, but I think there might be a few changes for Middlesbrough. I don't think they'll overreact, but I think there might be a few changes there. Lenihan I thought would be out, but he's served his suspension tonight in the League Cup, so he will actually be available again for the weekend. But it'd be interesting to see whether it's him or Dale Fry. Like I say, I think McNair could come in for Dijksteel.
Yeah.
Bowler probably stays on the left.
Well, he's left-footed, isn't he?
Yeah, and Wilder seems big on having the left-sided centre-back and the left-sided central midfielder being left-footed. So I think it'd be interesting to see with them, but it looked better in the end, and I think they were sort of going hard for a while as well to try and get an equaliser, but just couldn't make it happen. But there's no excuse for sort of how they started the game. Yes, QPR did well, but there's no excuse for how they started the game, and I think Wilder will be very clear with them, and I'd be surprised if we see another performance like that at least for a while from them. In terms of QPR, I mean we've talked a lot about Middlesbrough. In terms of QPR, a much more positive performance than the opening game. You sort of got a little bit more of an idea of what what Beale wants them to be. It's worth noting Powell, Amos, and Willock. After the League Cup game, Beale said all of them won't be playing this weekend. So it might be a case of trying to get through the game this weekend against Sunderland, where they will be down a few players. But what do you think of QPR options for people?
So before the news about Willock, Willock was one of a number of players I was looking as an O'Hare replacement. I think the fixtures are quite good, and I just thought I always get the feeling Willock is a bit better player than Chair, more likely to score goals, maybe not assists. Um, I think they're both good options. So if you've got Chair, I would keep him, especially with the run of fixtures. Um, but I'm not sure. I just don't trust QPR's back line at the minute. I'm not convinced of Dickey in a two. They've obviously brought in Dunn over for Clark Salter this week. They don't have a good enough right back. Powell's injured, so they're going to be playing a left back who's not highly rated either. So yeah, I think with that news and the players out, it's probably a wait and see for me now. But if you have the players, I think you have to keep them.
Yeah, and as we said, I know it will come up in a question later, someone asking if Field is an asset. The answer is no. If you look at his assist, he gives it to Willock around halfway, who then goes on a run and like bangs it in. That's not the sort of sustainable return. As much as we love Chris Willock, that's not the sustainable sort of return there. But we'll move on to our next game, which is Bristol City 2, Sunderland 3. So Dan, kick us off on this one.
Yeah, so lineup. Masengo came in for James. James got an injury in the warm up. Sykes continued at right wing back. So Wilson was still on the bench. For Sunderland, Sims came in for Embleton. I was a bit surprised about this. So they played two up front. Still played the back five, but they had sort of had Pritchard in behind Sims and Stewart. Mind blank, sorry. We've been talking about him as well before
Yeah,
the start of the pod. So the first goal, well, Naismith got caught playing out of the back, so already he's given away a penalty and he's given the ball away playing out of the back. Assist Stewart, goal Sims. Bristol City pulled one back, good move, and finished Vyman again. A lot of people happy with this. He looks like he's continuing his form from last season. Assist Weimer again. They then went 2-1 up, cross goal, Weiman assist, goal Martin. And then you're thinking, can Bristol City go and score 3 or 4? No, it's Bristol City. So they can see two more goals. Sims with his second, assist Pritchard. And then Stewart finally gets his goal, another assist from Pritchard. So yeah, I think during pre-season we thought that there could be decent options at Sunderland because I think we thought they would have options because they weren't going to be a team near the bottom, and I think it just shows that game week 1 Clark looked really good, and game week 2 Sims, Stewart, and Pritchard have all contributed. So I think there's going to be some very interesting options at Sunderland moving forward. Bristol City get off their defence. There's exactly the same, but Vyman is another great option. I think going to have a good year. I think.
yeah. I mean, from Bristol City, Vyman, maybe Chris Martin if you need to save the money. But I wouldn't be going anywhere near their defence. I think they're one of the 2 or 3 worst defensive sides in the division, and they keep proving me right. So, yeah, I'd be avoiding their defense, their attack. Particularly Weimann. He's going to get returns. I mean, he's scored again tonight in the League Cup. He's going to keep ticking over. On the Sunderland side, yeah, you talked about Pritchard. He's clearly the main creative force there. I thought it was very interesting to see that they went with both Stewart and Sims. I think it worked well. I think there will be times where they drop down to just one up front, and I would assume that Stewart stays in the side at that point. But he got his first goal. Sims got a goal off a Stewart tackle, actually. So he got himself an assist with a tackle, which you love. But it's those sorts of prices as well. Pritchard is at 6 as a midfielder. I mean, we talked about Clark, who's at, I think, 5.5. You've got Stewart at 6.5 and Sims at 5.6. And those are sort of enabling prices, but it's enabling prices for forwards that could actually get you returns.
Yeah, it's similar to Victor last year, isn't it?
Yeah, and so I think I wouldn't judge anyone going on them now. If you don't go right now, you're probably waiting a few game weeks, because then it gets slightly tougher. But if you were wanting to go with one of those forwards, I do think they're viable, although I would lean Stewart. And as a strategy, it seems like try and make sure you have an attacking player against Bristol City every week.
Yeah, could be an option. Yeah.
But we'll move on to our next game, which is Swansea 0, Blackburn 3. This was a bit of a turn up. I'll kick us off on this one. So Swansea made a couple of changes. Very unpopular with people, because outside of the 2 strikers who did both start in Pirro and Obafemi, the 2 most owned Swansea players, maybe Fisher, were Sorinola and Patterson, and they were the 2 that were benched. Not really sure why, but Manning and Cham came into the team. And yeah, on the Blackburn side, sorry, they I think it was just the one change for them. Smodic's in for Jack Vale. Obviously, Smodic's getting a goal on debut. I think he took it quite well. That was sort of an encouraging sign for them as well, that he came in and he slotted sort of straight into the action with an assist from Hedges, who looked bright again. The second goal was Brereton Diaz. He got himself on the board now with another assist for Hedges. And then Dolan set up Travis on the counter for their third goal. Lewis Travis 2 in 2, and borrowing the stat off the highlights show, before that he had 4 in his last 138. For people who are thinking he's suddenly like a goal scorer, I wouldn't bank on it. But yeah, I mean, Blackburn top of the table. It's only 2 games gone, but they're the only ones across the Championship and League One that have won 2 out of 2. And I thought that, from what I saw at least, they looked good again. I do think they're clearly playing a slightly different style under Thomason, which seems to be working well for them so far. I think Hedges, who they brought in partway through last season, looks to have started the season well. Smodix, I think, will really help them. The real key, I mean, I know sort of the returns are coming from elsewhere. The real key with them still feels like, if they can hold on to Brereton Diaz, there's still, 3 weeks left in the window. He continues to be heavily linked with Premier League clubs. It's just about whether they can keep him around. But in terms of this game, they looked to have more of the chances. I know Pirro and Obafemi both had a chance each, but the Swansea had more of the chances if you look at the numbers. But you look at the sort of the meaningful chances almost, and you're seeing more Blackburn, which is interesting. I also think it's a bit of an indictment that Blackburn again, Swansea again had so much of the ball, and they're not creating that many chances with it. It's 70 or 71% of the possession and had 8 shots. Like that's, I know that like possession can help you and you're trying to create chances or whatever, but that's not that's not many chances to actually create with all that possession.
The thing I have with Swansea is he's so stubborn he won't change.
No,
They're weaker this year. They've got no Christie, no Wolf. They're playing Latabodier at right wing back. He's a centre. He's not good enough at wing back. It's
no, I
becoming
sympathise with him as well because he's a centre back trying to play wing back.
yeah. It's not good enough, and teams are just going to sit back, wait until they muck about like Darling did for the first goal, and they'll just counter and score, and they give away so many big chances that I was hopeful going into the season, and I know it's only 2 games, but it's too predictable, and he's got to move away, not change drastically his style of football, but he's got to come up with a way to make more meaningful chances. On Blackburn, what is interesting, and the XG's not been great the first 2 games. Obviously, they had that dire game with QPR where they scored the wonder goal. But in the first 2 games, they've only conceded 0.5 XG in total. That's probably why I think it's Pickering and Britain have had a price rise to 5.6. So, yes, they're scoring goals, but I wonder if actually the defence could be the place to go long term. Also, what's your view on Hedges? Because he's had double price rise,
Yeah, I mean he looks very
5.7.
bright. I like him. Obviously,
Yeah,
I watch a fair amount of Scottish football, and I thought he did well at Aberdeen before he moved down. I could totally see how that was going to transfer to the Championship. He didn't play as much as you would have liked after moving down in January, um, but he certainly hit the ground running, and I think he could be a good option. You see the variety of ways he can get returns as well, either
yeah.
from staying out on the wing and delivering the ball, or from coming in field and making things happen. So I wouldn't want to overcommit after 2 games, but I like him as a potential option.
Well, he's 5.7.
Yeah,
It's quite low risk, isn't it?
yeah.
I think
Um,
that their fixtures aren't great though, um, so that might put you off. But for that price, I think it's worth it. Same with Sammy Smodics as well. I think.
yeah, I mean, I think there's 2 or 3 other guys at that price, or around that price that you might want to go with instead. But
Yeah,
he's certainly a good option. I will say that. Um, we should probably talk about the Swansea forwards.
I think we
I
have
know
to.
it will come up in the questions later, but that's 2 games in a row now. They haven't really done anything. They both picked up a booking in this game as well, just to top it off. Um, surely it's not time yet for people to sell them though.
What I would say is there's a lot of teams with double Swansea strikers, a lot more than I thought. You have to get rid of one, in my opinion, now. Especially when you've got Vyman started well. I know Victor's only played 1 game, might get sold, but it looks like he's done all right. As we've already mentioned, you've got maybe the Sunderland lads. Um, I just think double you've got to get rid now. They do play Blackpool
Yeah,
though,
that's the counterpoint.
and
They do play Blackpool this weekend.
it depends. If you've got O'Hare, Twine, and a few others, I'd probably keep one more week. But double, definitely get rid of one.
Yeah. So we'll move on to our next game then, which is Burnley 1, Luton 1. Dan, talk
Yeah.
to us about this one then.
Yeah, so I managed to watch the whole game on iFollow from Belgium. Um, so the lineup, Burnley, they kept the same. They were unchanged, but Twine wasn't in the squad at all, which was a bit of surprise. We found out he had an ongoing issue, I think, from company. He was going to be out a while. Um, New signing Benson was on the bench. Um, Luton's lineup. Cornick came in for Morris. Berry and Burke were on the bench. Luton started really well in this game. High press. Burnley struggled to get out their own half. Um, their centre back struggled with the physicality of Adebayo at times. We were just picking up the second balls constantly and the loose balls. Our goal came, it was a Potts goal, but the build up was Bell down the left, whipped it in, Adebayo knocked it down. It hit Freeman and then fell to Potts nicely, who scored, really couldn't miss. And then for the rest of the first half, Burnley done nothing. They were passing around, didn't really create too much. Luton, although didn't create too much, we had a couple of shots that wasn't shown on the highlights, and that we had a couple of situations where our final ball was just a little bit off. Otherwise, we'd have been clean through. Second half though, Burnley they brought on Benson for I can't remember Bastion, I think,
I've
and
forgotten already.
I think it was because I thought they were going to take Costello off, but they didn't. Um, and yeah, they came at us, got the goal. Brownhill, great finish. Another assist by Barnes where he just sorts of hits him and he gets an assist. He's also had a price rise as well, which is a bit funny as well. But yeah, great curling shot for Brownhill. And it was all Bernie, but there wasn't too much pressure. I think Barnes had was shot that he hit wide of the post. Benson was the live wire though. Um, he was one player who actually got the ball and started dribbling at us. He caused us a lot of problems. So I'd expect maybe not next week, but within a couple of games, he'll be in the team. And at 7.5, he could be a nice price to be a decent option. Um, like I said, overall, I think it was a fair result, 1-1. Um, I'm not sure if Burnley are going to be up there unless they need to sign an experienced centre back and a striker. If they do that, they might challenge top two, but I think top six more likely. Luton, only thing to note, um, with Freeman starting, he's left-footed, so he's taken over Naismith's corners and free kicks. So Bree isn't on all of them, um, which is a bit not great, but it's one of those things, to be honest. I don't know what you thought of the game, Angus.
Yeah, so obviously I didn't watch the whole thing. I just watched the highlights, which, you know, they can present a slightly different picture.
Yeah,
Although I do think it looked very different in terms of Burnley's approach first half and Burnley's approach second half.
yeah,
As you mentioned, the man that I commented to you just watching the
yeah.
highlights was Benson. He looked really lively. It looked like everyone in the ground wanted him to score as
Yeah,
well.
I didn't.
He looked like that sort of player that fans just latch onto. He's always on the verge of making something happen. And
I just wonder about, is he all pace and power, and does he have the goals and the assist, the final end product? But I'm guessing we'll see that over the next few weeks.
yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing is it's one to watch. I certainly wouldn't be saying go on right away, but he looked to have a bit about him, and that certainly changed things for them. I know they're looking at more wingers, which I think will help them. Having particularly as they do like to have these players sort of play at least wider if they're not playing as true
Yeah,
wingers. Having those players who can take a man on down the line, sort of thing, and get a cross in or something like that, just to mix it up and have multiple things they can throw at teams will help them. But they still have a number of options there. I'm still not going near Ashley Barnes. His streak of assists by accident can't continue. But Brownhill's goal was a perfect example of what we're talking about with him and why he could be an option. He's in that sort of area. He's playing in an advanced role.
He didn't do as much as I thought he would, but
No,
he
but
does
he's
have that
in that sort
quality.
of area. He's in that sort of area, and he has that sort of quality.
And also for 6 million.
Yeah, all it takes is one moment. He's 6 million in one of the better teams in the league, even if we're not sure where Burnley will actually be.
Yeah.
He's playing in a more advanced role at 6 million for one of the best teams in the league. It's hard to ignore. On the Luton side, like you say, I mean, Bree not being on quite as many set pieces is less good, but for the moment, I'm still quite happy to have him. I think he's still a good option. For those on Adebayo, I've seen a few around, those potentially looking to go to him as well, as they look for striker alternatives, particularly to, say, the Swansea guys. Do the goals look like they're coming?
I don't know. It's hard because the first game, he didn't really do much, as in have shots, but he was impressive in his build-up play. And obviously, you play in Burnley, one of the best teams in the league. You then look in, our next three are Preston, Bristol City, and Swansea. Well, he can score against those teams. So I'm not sure I'd be going there over certain strikers, but if you have him, you've probably got other things you need to do. So it's probably worth keeping, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's an interesting punt. I will say that. I think if people are looking for sort of a punt with potential upside, I think he's an interesting option. I don't think he's necessarily the best option, but he's not the worst either.
What about Luke Freeman? Because he's 5.6. I know he was terrible at Sheffield United, but Jones has a habit of making players become better than what they were, or taken back to a level. He's playing 10 on set pieces, will do well for key passes.
Given that he's flamed out at both Millwall and Sheffield United, and a big part of that was due to injury, I'd personally probably want to see a few more games from him, just literal like games played from him before I went there. But I think he could be an option. I think he could be an option, yeah.
And also, like, I'm not sure he plays every game in the 3-game, and he'll come off 60, 70 minutes, but he's 5.6.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's
not a terrible
we've spoken
side.
about with a few of these guys now. At that sort of price, you're taking a relatively low risk sort of go at someone, and he could be an option, but like I say, I'd want to see him get through a few more games. But I do think there's a potential option there. We all know the sort of ability he's had in the past. You assume most, if not all of it, is still there. But yeah, he's certainly one to watch, particularly if you're looking for options in the 5 to 6 million bracket. Like, that's somewhere you could be looking as well. We'll move on to our next game, though, which is Norwich 1, Wigan 1. So, Dan, kick us off on this one.
Yeah, so this was the lunchtime game on Saturday, so I got to watch all of it. Chose this over that Fulham Liverpool game. I don't know why you'd watch that. Lineup, Nunes, new signing straight in, same as Gibson. Obviously, Gibson replaced Hanley. Wigan came in for Watmore, who was injured, centre back. First goal, McLean, assist, Keane. Just a terrible mistake by Gibson. Basically, the only time Norwich looked like in trouble was their own fault, just sloppy play at the back. Obviously, Aaron scored quite a good finish, assist Rashika, good build-up played from Cantwell. just Aaron's overlapping, decent strike. There were obviously the main things in this game is the Giannoulis injury, which we've later found out is 8 months. Sorry, 8 weeks. Blew out 8 months. And there were something about the Aaron's injury, but it seems like he's going to be okay after his cut on his leg. And the other thing is Pukki. Now, Pukki, massive talking about in the community. He's not done well, but he looked better in this game. Norwich looked better. And on another, he hit the bar, dragged a shot wide. On another game, he scores 1 or 2 goals, and we're all saying, "Oh, he's a must-have." So the position I'm in with the strikers I've got, I'm keeping Pukki, and he will be captain or vice captain, not decided yet. I thought Wigan at times looked good, but it was mainly down to on the counter and down to Norwich sloppy play. I know a few people had McLean, so good asset, and another one of these 5.5 to 6 million players who could be an option. I don't know what you thought about this game, Angus.
Yeah, I got to watch less of it. My brother is a Fulham fan, so
Yeah.
that made it a bit more difficult for me to watch it. But yeah, I got bits and pieces of it. As is the habit when you have it on a second screen, there are times where you sort of you drift away from it, particularly if something's happening on the main screen. But Norwich did look better in this one. They looked like they had a real creativity issue against Cardiff. That looked better in this game. They looked more coherent going forward. Some of the shooting positions still weren't great. There are a number of shots there that look good because they go close, but they're actually not. They're taken from the corner of the penalty area sort of thing. It's still not great, but more encouraging signs, like you say. Pukki looked a bit better. When we come to the questions later, he might feature a little bit. I thought it was interesting that Nunez came straight in. I'm intrigued to see more of him. Rashica obviously got the assist for the goal. Cantwell, I thought, did look good as well. Max Aaron's got his goal. I thought he took it well. He had a couple of shots. We know, it's the same sort of thing. Obviously, different manager, but it's the same sort of thing. He's still getting high, getting involved in the attacks. Obviously, it's gone poorly for me in this one with having Giannoulis rather than him. As you say, it's a minimum of 8 weeks out for him with ankle ligament damage. Looked a really nasty one, but still a couple of things to potentially sort out in the defence. It'll be interesting to see who plays left back now. Sam McCallum, who Dean Smith seemed quite happy with in that game, and then in the time he played in the League Cup on Tuesday, then went off injured, complaining about pain in his foot. Dean Smith didn't seem optimistic about it. I would assume Sorensen, who scored a great goal in the League Cup, would play left back until they can bring someone else in. But it's already beginning to become patching it up a bit in a couple of positions, which would be the only concern with them is that. But there were more encouraging signs. I do agree. I think that's the big thing for them. The results will come, the goals will come, but just getting it more encouraging. On the Wigan side, it's another point gained. I think that's the one where you look at it and you're like, yeah, we've gained a point there.
Yeah.
You mentioned James McLean. I think he's the main one to look at, really. Aside from people going with Tilt, who's a playing 4.0 defender. McLean playing on the left side of that 4-2-3-1 is getting high. He took his goal well. He was straight on it as well. After they got the ball, he was straight on it, running in there. He's been in the bonus both games as well. So it looks like he has multiple avenues to points, which at his price could be very good. So he's one I really like as a potential option. I know a number of people have him already, but he's certainly another one of these players that would be on the radar. And again, it comes into this sort of situation when we're talking about some of these other guys where you can sort of pick your one, even pick your two from that price range, and have decent options there, which I think is potentially promising for people. In terms of the Norwich options, I think the only one really is sort of sell if you've got Giannoulis. I don't think you're looking to sell if you've got anyone else, despite the disappointing start to the season. But we'll move on now to our next game, which is Sheffield United 2, Millwall 0. So Dan, kick us off on this one.
Yeah, 2-0 Sheffield United lineup. Ahmed Havic came in, and so did Brewster. For Millwall, McNamara and Bennett came in. Honeyman got suspended in his EFL game, so he couldn't play. And Fleming's injured, I think, for 2-3 weeks, maybe longer, which is disappointing because I think we all wanted to see what he could do. So the 2 goals for Sheffield United. First one, long ball from Fodringham over the top. There's a foul on the centre back. It drops to NDI and he scores. The second one, a terrible mistake by double goal machine Cresswell, who I don't even know what he was doing. He must have saw someone in the crowd or something because it was a terrible pass. And Fleck raced on and passed to Berger, who took it around the keeper nicely and scored. Norwood missed a pen. Great save by Bartowski, who's just constantly does 1 or 2, 3 of these a season. That's why he's one of the most expensive goalies in the game. But I thought that the interesting stat I heard was Sheffield United at home, apart from the playoffs, have only conceded 4 goals in 16 home games. So I'm guessing the first question is, are we sleeping on Sheffield United defenders?
I don't think so. I think part of it with them was their difficult start, which made it a bit of a tougher read. But also, the ones we were looking at, your likes of Vogels were injured. Egan, I mean, I did say to people before the season, John Egan. But then there was a little bit of like, who's going to play which spot, which I think played a role in people maybe not going towards them because they are expensive. But I think they will become options. I think that's the key thing. They will become options, possibly throughout the team, but particularly those defenders, I think.
What do you think about Millwall then? Obviously, they had a great result at home to Stoke. Obviously, scored 2 set pieces. You could argue that the first one's a foul and the second one's just a sloppy goal. So, is it still the same with Millwall? If you've got defenders, keep them. Honeyman's obviously back in the team, so keep him. And I think it is, isn't it, with Millwall?
Yeah, I think that's the big thing for me. Malone, if you've got Malone, you're absolutely keeping him. I think, for those who've already jumped on Cresswell, he had a disappointing game, but I don't think he's going to be turfed out for that. Honeyman, like you say, will come back into the team, I think. So for people who own him, not a problem. They weren't great in this one, but it's clearly a very tough place to go. We know that they're a good team. They have this great home record. And so I certainly wouldn't be rushing to get rid of Millwall assets. In terms of the Sheffield United ones, we've talked about the defence, but the attack. What are your thoughts on Berg and Jai and the strikers?
So I think after they've got Middlesbrough game week 3, and then they've got quite a nice run for the next few games. I like NDI. I think he will start most games. Obviously, they've signed McAtee and Cadra, which could limit his minutes, more likely to get taken off. But I think he's progressing at an alarming rate where it might get to the point where they just got to keep playing him. Um, Berger, I know he's playing one of the tens behind the other day Brewster, but for me, if Sheffield United want to challenge top two, he's got to play deeper with probably Ollie Norwood. So he's a no go for me. And then up front, it's just a wait and see. You've got Billy Sharp still there, and he's the main man, and he so although I think Brewster could be a decent option, it's a wait and see. So probably NDI is the one, but maybe hold off after the Middlesbrough game. Maybe I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you were going in on one right away, if you were like, I'm going to get one now, it would be Njai. I'm really interested to see McAtee as he gets more minutes. Obviously, very highly thought of at Man City.
Yeah,
He could be well suited to playing one of those
6'5".
attacking midfield roles. Heckingbottom also strongly suggested after he came in that it could well be Berger back into midfield and McAtee is one
Yeah,
of those tens. So, like you say, that would then put me off a little bit going to Berger. But I think they're interesting ones to watch. Like you say, they've got this tougher game against Middlesbrough, but then their fixtures do start to turn. I think we will be looking at them more actively
yeah.
as transfer options.
Especially that crazy record at home.
Yeah,
Might need to get on one of the defenders. I
yeah.
think.
For someone who maybe has like a Giannoulis or something, it might be that you actually just make the move to one of them.
Yeah.
Um, but we'll move on to our next game. I'm sure Jamie's very disappointed to not be on the podcast for this, although he was there. Stoke 2, Blackpool 0. Dan, talk to us about this one.
Yeah, I think it was mainly just the time and show, wasn't it? I think we mentioned throughout pre-season he was probably Stoke's best option. Now there's no Nick Powell for the and especially, but I think he went sort of under the radar to an extent because of his position change from a midfielder where you just wasn't looking at him last year to the wing back. He's become a really good option, I think. Set up two goals and obviously kept a clean sheet as well. So get even if you get one and a clean sheet, you're looking at double figures and it's bonus as well. So yeah, the other thing was he put Brown back in the side. How he dropped Brown for game week 1 is absolutely terrible decision. He's off and running again.
Yeah.
He's 7-5, isn't he? I think Stokes not
Yeah.
terrible run. Maybe he's the option, but it's O'Neill and he could play anything the next game week. I'm worried about Blackpool. I think although they won game week 1 against Reading, if you look at the underlying data, Reading created quite a few chances, and that's one of the reasons. If you have Swansea, it's probably a hold for game week 3. Stoke, I think Tyman's a really good option if you're coming down for Giannoulis, but there's so many good defenders that it might just be jumping on and off at the right time down to fixtures. But yeah, better performance by Stoke. Um, and I've got Timon, but if he wasn't, he'd be high on the shortlist, I think.
Yeah. Obviously he's had a mega haul this week, and you can see why with those sort of getting the ball into the box, into good positions, into good areas. Particularly when there are a number of players in there. He's probably the main one from either of these teams is
Yeah,
his time, and I don't have him. He's on the short list. As you say, Jacob Brown back in the starting lineup, back amongst the goals, makes the decision not to play him in game week 1 even more baffling. But yeah, I mean, I think it looked like it made a difference, them having Will Smallbone in the side as well. I think that makes a big difference. So it'd be interesting to see it going forward whether he actually settles on a lineup or whether there's more and more rotation almost. That'll be interesting to see. I think particularly as we get into some more condensed fixtures, we'll get an idea of how that's going to go for some teams, particularly in the more congested areas. So that'll be good information in terms of Blackpool. Like you say, I'm concerned about them. They look poor. They have the odd moment going forward. Bowler again at the heart of it. They probably should have had a goal actually. I think it was Carey had the chance to set up Yates.
Oh yeah, Yates, yeah.
And he hit it so much harder than he needed to. He just blazed it across the goal where, much more controlled ball across, and Yates is nodding it into an empty net. Like it was a little bit of a bizarre one, but yeah, they're certainly not a go-to, and they're another one that you could potentially look to target, to be honest. Even more so, I think, with defenders. You're not always going to get the time and 2 assists, clean sheet sort of thing, but they don't look like scoring many, so that could be another way to points, particularly if you can pick sort of fullbacks or wing backs against them. But we'll move on to the next game. Reading 2, Cardiff 1. Dan talked to us about this one, and I guess we're going to talk about Tom Ince.
Yeah, going to try not to go into too depth these last few games. But yeah, Reading 1-2-1. And as you said, they went a goal down. A Dowder with the header, Wintle assist from a set piece, but Ince won a penalty, long scored, and then Ince scores an absolute great goal. Assist to Jaria. I know he's become a bit of a joke, Tom Ince, at championship level, but like we've been saying all season, he is their talisman for Reading, apart from Lucas Shaw, and he's going to play near enough every minute. So I think they're just coming to the end of a nice fixture. I think there might be one game and then the fixtures turn. But if they get decent fixtures, 3 or 4 games, like it's not terrible getting Tom Ince because he's on all corners, he'll be on all free kicks. So you might get the odd return. He's I think he's 6 million. So he's another one of these great price midfielders who can score well in certain game weeks. He's good for bonus as well. So although he is a bit of a joke and Reading probably aren't one of the best team in the league, he will score a lot of points this season, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I feel for him a little bit. I don't think it helps when Paul Ince comes out after the game and talks about how how Thomas sets the sort of example that all his teammates can follow. It's just not the sort of thing that helps when your dad is out here singling you out for praise over and above playing well. Like, I think it's not his fault. It doesn't help when we're sort of making fun of him. But no, I think he's a good option. Like you say, he's going to play. He's on a lot of the set pieces. And the other thing with him, even in some of these tougher games, the fact that he is capable of these moments of magic means that you're not necessarily reliant on them having much of the game for him to potentially do something either. You don't want to be banking on that, but he's capable of it, which I think helps.
I do want to briefly mention about Cardiff. Although they've scored 2 goals this season, their XG is 0.4 over 2 games. There was that stat against Norwich where it was 0.08. So they've done a bit better this game week. And I know a Dowder is in a few teams. I would not be going anywhere near any of their attacking players at the minute.
No, and I was looking at O'Dowda when I was looking around options, and the other thing that sort of it sort of points towards that is O'Dowda has an attacking return in each game, and yet
Yeah,
hasn't been in the bonus in either.
yeah,
Their attacking players aren't really doing anything unless they return
yeah.
in points wise. So that would put me off a bit with them. But we'll move on to the next one, which was the Friday night untelevised game. Birmingham
Red
2,
button.
Huddersfield 1. Oh, yeah, it was red button, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Birmingham 2, Huddersfield 1. Dan, talk to us about this one.
yeah. It was a pretty decent game. I watched it, so I've now watched Birmingham's first two opening games because they played against Luton, and they were unchanged. And Huddersfield brought in Rodoni and Angerin, who I think we thought would happen after they made sort of an impact against Burnley. Um, but Birmingham started really well. Assist by Bakuna, great cross for a diving header by Hogan, and then Placheta scored a goal long range where Nichols probably should have done a bit better with. Um, and then second half, Huddersfield played a bit better, but they couldn't really play any worse. They scored a nice worked goal, assist Thomas for Wards. Obviously, I've seen Birmingham, and the first time against Luton, they defended very well, and they didn't really do too much going forward apart from set pieces. This game, though, they players like Bakuna and Placheta really um, played well. I think Bakuna's another one of these who's on set pieces and
Yeah,
things like that, so he will pick up decent amount of bonus. Placheta's actually gone up point 0.1, so he's done quite well over the first two games. So look, it's Birmingham. I'm not sure if their run will continue, but as again, Bakuna could be one of these players in that 5 to 6 million who's a decent option. And defensively, I don't hate Colin because they look okay at the back.
yeah. I think the thing with them is they do have some tougher games coming. Although in the next four they do play Watford, but they also play Cardiff, Wigan, and Rotherham. So it's not a terrible little stretch, particularly if you need a short term option
Yeah.
as an injury replacement or something. You can do a lot worse than Birmingham. Um, I thought,
Huddersfield are
yeah,
terrible though. Oh
Huddersfield
my
are
word.
poor, and I think there is an element of over assessing how teams look
Yeah.
um, and sort of factoring in the opponents, and I do think there's an element of that with Birmingham here. Although credit to them, we're all tipping them to go down before the season. I'm not saying they won't, but every point they can pick up now helps them down the line. So take advantage of these situations.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure we're looking at too many players from these teams, so we will move swiftly on. And we have Preston 0, Hull 0. Dan, do you have much for us on this one?
Um, Brady is the main man here. I think he's done quite well again on bonus. Went up. He got another 9 pointer. I think he's gone up point 0.1 to 5.1. Um, he's doing all right, but we've got this 3 game week, and is it Fernandez they've brought in? So I worry if Brady will play all 3 games, he could get that middle game off. Um, the other thing to mention is Parrott. He's having a lot of chances. I think he's missed 3 big chances already this season. Um, but they are creating big chances. They created 3 against Hull. They should have won this game against Hull, really. They were the better side, Preston. Um, so, yeah, I think Brady's definitely an option. Maybe Parrott. The rest are wait and see. Hull, after they won flukily against Bristol City from a dodgy penalty and a deflected goal, they somehow got a draw here. They're just they're just a massive avoid now because they've got those 3 difficult games. Um, but they'll be probably quite happy to be on 4 points when they probably shouldn't be. So, yeah, avoid Hull, Preston, Brady probably.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of concern there. Because there's always concern when you have Robbie Brady that an injury's right around the corner. But Fernandes did get 2 assists in their Carabao Cup game, and obviously, that United won't necessarily be picking their team for them, but Manchester United will have sent him there to get minutes, and so there will be a little bit of pressure there for him to play. So that will be one to watch. And I do think among the cheap forwards, you can do worse than Troy Parrott. You can probably do better, but you can do worse.
Yeah.
And then we'll touch briefly, finally, on the last game that didn't happen, which is Coventry-Rotherham. Obviously, it helped some people. Some people obviously feel like it was a missed opportunity for points. Some people it didn't help. First thing to say, I've seen some pictures of the pitch. It was in a shocking state. Like they could not have played. Like, people are talking about, oh yeah, how bad can it be or whatever. It was bad. In various areas of the pitch. Just to give people a little bit of background, Coventry don't actually own their stadium. Wasps rugby team do. And a new pitch was supposed to be laid prior to the Commonwealth Games because the Sevens rugby was being played at the Rico. The pitch wasn't laid prior to the Commonwealth Games, and then obviously they had the rugby, so they couldn't lay the pitch. And then the pitch still wasn't laid. So we're recording on Wednesday night. Their match tonight, they played at Burton. They're away this weekend. Their hope is to have the pitch laid. They're talking to Wasps. They're talking to the EFL to have the pitch laid by their next home game. But we'll see what happens. But unfortunately for them, it's largely out of their control. But hopefully involving the EFL will help them sort of rectify the situation. In terms of the rearrangement, the EFL have said they want it rearranged in the earliest possible midweek. Now, thanks to FPL Panda looking into this before I even had a chance, he reckons that means most likely game week 8. Now, we should heavily caveat this by saying we are giving best guesses. We're not predicting this. We're not, sort of telling you where it will be. These are best guesses. The next alternative, I think, after that is game week 14. And if it doesn't get put then, it's probably not being played till after the World Cup, which then creates a further issue. So,
and also, I think it could have been earlier for the Carabao Cup round 2. They could have played it then. Rotherham tonight have got through, so that's not happening. So it's game week 8 at the earliest, which you'd think it will probably happen that week, although that's not guaranteed.
No, it all depends on when this pitch actually gets laid. That's the key thing still, is when this pitch gets laid or when an alternative gets found, which at this point is very difficult in terms of finding a ground that they can use or grounds that dovetail right with other teams' fixtures. Like, previously they ground shared with Birmingham. That'd be very tough to do at this point. So it's a wait and see, but just to sort of let you guys know what's going on with that. As and when, I'm sure we'll get an announcement, but that's sort of the heads up. Don't take it as gospel as game week 8. That's just sort of the best guess we have. And if not, game week 14, but we can't say that's certain. So obviously that's impacted people, but there wasn't much that could be done about it, unfortunately, and we'll just see what happens with that. But now we'll go on to the questions. Thank you to all of you. We've had a lot of questions. I said before I was going to collate them all together in terms of the what people asking similar questions. I haven't. So what I'm going to do is when we get to one we've repeated or that's a repeat, I will sort of read your name and your question, but obviously refer you back to the fact that we've answered it. These are in no particular order. They're just as they come up on my phone. So the first one we've got is from John Jacobson, and I told him to ask it here because otherwise I would have lost track of it, and it's the first one on here. And he said, if he wildcards now, it's an overhaul, not a wildcard. Let's call them the right thing. Which 3 to 4 teams should I target to get players from? Any players that would 100% be in your team if you were overhauling. So Dan, in terms of an overhaul, teams you'd be
Yeah,
prioritising?
West Brom. Probably Middlesbrough. It's tricky, isn't it? Because I'd want to say Norwich, but I might not after the next game week. I would definitely say maybe not so much, but maybe have a Sheffield United, just because their fixtures will change, and maybe Sunderland. Just have a couple of those cheap players in, I think.
Yeah, the other one I'd mention is Burnley. They have a tough game this week against Watford.
Hmm.
Their fixtures do then take a nice turn. I mean, for example,
Yeah,
the 3 games after that, they play Hull, Blackpool, and Wigan.
yeah,
So I'd be looking at Burnley. In terms of players, when we're talking about it, at least one of Wallace and Swift. You know, you're talking about the
yeah.
West Brom, at least one of them.
Middlesbrough wing back.
Yeah, I'd have at least one of the Middlesbrough wing backs. I'd have at least one of the Burnley fullbacks. I'd have
You
probably
could,
Max Aarons, maybe one of
yeah,
the Norwich midfielders. Like you say, maybe one of the Sheffield United defenders. But I do
maybe
think there are options there.
maybe one of the Sunderland attackers or midfielders.
Yeah,
So Clark, Pritchard, Sims, or Stewart. I think.
yeah. And the other one, I'm sure you've already got him, but I'd be saying, looking at their run still to come as well, you've got to have Andy Vyman in there.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, so if you have any other questions about that, John, you know, I'm in the Planet FPL Slack all the time, or you can find both of us on Twitter, and um, we'll answer some further
Well,
questions, I'm sure.
what I would say about the over, I would try and put it off. Like I'd
Yeah,
be tempted to take a -8 and 12, especially if you've got players like O'Hare and Twine and Giannoulis. They're not playing anyway, so
yeah,
it's worth hits really.
yeah. I mean, all that company has committed to today is that Twine definitely won't be involved this weekend.
Yeah,
I don't know for certain how bad the injury is. But I know he won't be involved this weekend. And then, do you really want to have that as a rolling week to week issue?
yeah.
Um, but yeah, if you have any other questions, I'm happy to help. Or if you want me to look at your team and say actually you really don't need to overhaul, then that's fine. But I do think particularly some of these bigger hits now to save the overhaul might be worth it. I'd be willing to go -8, -12. It would really depend on what you're doing and what you need to address. But -4s, -8s, yeah. Next question from Joe follows FPL, and he said, should we consider Field as an 11th man instead of a bench player? Context: I'm considering using 2 free transfers to restructure and get more money into the starting 11 with Field as the enabling starting player. So it depends what you want. As we covered before, that assist is not representative of what he's going to get you. You know, unless he's constantly going to play short passes to guys who carry the ball 30 yards and score. But if you're willing to just have him tick over and sort of ones, twos, threes in the starting 11, then he'll play. He will play. You're not going to have to worry about him from that perspective. I would probably want more in my starting 11. I don't know how you feel, Dan.
I would have Field as my 14th man.
Yeah, I think he's perfectly fine as a 12th man, for example, in terms of the reliability. Depending on what you do with your squad structure, maybe
I don't know,
13th. I mean,
13th.
but yeah, I wouldn't be looking for him as a starter, to be honest. Like I say, I don't think that assist is really representative of what he's going to end up scoring. It's worth noting as well. I know he's playing a slightly different role to last season, or likely to play a slightly different role to last season. He did pick up 14 bookings in 29 games last year, so
Yeah.
he has that in him as well. The next question we've got is from FPL Odyssey, Alex. He said, which championship teams do you think will benefit most from the weather on Saturday afternoon, with temperatures forecast to be 30 plus degrees Celsius across the country? Any fixtures to target with captaincy or transfers because of this? So we were discussing this briefly earlier. I said, I mean, theoretically, someone like Swansea who keeps more of the ball, even if they don't necessarily do as much as you would like with it, are theoretically at an advantage because they're not pursuing the ball. But it's really, I guess, if you can find any of those games where there's a bigger discrepancy between the good team and the bad team, that might become worse in the heat. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, Dan.
I don't think he'll have much of an impact, to be honest. Especially as they've got 5 subs as well now. Like, for example, Luton press high. We might not be able to press to the same extent, but he can just take the front three off and
Yeah.
just bring on the. So I'm not sure it'll have a major impact, to be honest. It won't be something I'll think about.
No, I mean, I think it may well play a role, particularly with such extreme heat, particularly with at the moment the way it's a really dry heat.
You might
Um,
have less goals, maybe. And if a team goes one up, it might be hard for them to overturn it. But I'm, I'm not making decisions on it.
no, I don't think it's worth doing that. I think you can tie yourself up in knots trying to add additional factors into your decisions.
Yeah.
Um, so we'll move on to Neil Thompson has said all my questions are covered, saying they are obvious. Just want to say thanks for the great content already this season and pre-season. Good luck to all for game week 3. Well, thank you, Neil. I'm sure everyone will have noticed on the YouTube, we have not permanently abandoned graphics after the mishap last week. It's just that Jamie does our graphics and he's away this week, so we have no graphics. But we have not abandoned graphics as a thing. But yeah, that's the only misstep so far. But FPL Frustration has asked, based on what we have seen so far, who would you consider the optimal 3 forwards to be, assuming all 3 playing and no bench fodder? Many thanks. So Dan, what do you think on this?
It's tricky. I would say Vyman is the main one at the minute. He's just guaranteed to play. And the fixtures are good. And basically, Bristol City is so bad at the back, they're having to score 2 or 3 goals to get any points anyway. So they have to attack. Um, I don't think that maybe Victor.
I would have said
Oh,
Victor, and I probably would still, but these Everton rumours have made me nervous about it.
yeah. It's probably, I think it's still Pukki, Vyman, and Victor.
Yeah,
Although Pukki is, I can understand people wavering on Pukki.
yeah. I think that's the thing. It depends whether you're looking to cover. I mean, he did look better, and we know he's the best forward in the division. Um,
Yeah.
so you would assume at some point it's going to come right for him. So it's probably him, like you say, Vyman and Victor. But there's some flexibility there, I think. Perry Allen has asked us, he said, moving off Pukki is one that's on a lot of people's minds. My worry would be how would you get back if Norwich finally wake up? What would your take be, especially as freeing up the budget would certainly bring Watford assets in? So I've seen people looking at the idea of what they can do with the funds if they come off Pukki. And I think it's an interesting conversation. But what do you think, Dan, about both moving off him, freeing up the budget, and the importance of leaving yourself a route back?
See, with Pukki, I look at my team, and I'm not going to lie, I have thought about it, but it's not been high on my priority list. Most of us will have two or three things that need doing, especially with rolling transfers and things like that. Um, he was probably fourth on the list, and even then, he's not really a player you have to get rid of. He's
No.
proven at this level. Like I said, he wasn't great in last game, but he still could have walked away with 2 goals. He's playing for one of the best teams in the league, whether you think they've started like it. And they're playing, I can't think who they're playing Hull, who Preston have just created 3 big chances against Hull. So if Preston can create 3 big chances, there's a chance Norwich can as well. Um, if it's going to Watford, I am not looking at Watford until after this game week, and I'm not looking at Sarr or Dennis until after the transfer window.
Yeah. I think that's the big thing. I think you have two ways of going about selling Pukki. One of them is you decide you're going without. You go to Grant, you go to Brereton Diaz, you move the funds and go to someone like Jed Wallace instead.
Yeah.
And you just decide you're going without him. And worst comes to the worst, you either take a -4, -8 to get him back, or you bring him back on an overhaul. But you just decide you're going without him and you're not going to worry about your route back to him. That's one way to go about it. The other way is, like you say, you book in, if this goes wrong, if I need to get back to him, like, what am I leaving? So maybe rather than downgrading him dramatically and moving the funds, so rather than moving him down to a Victor or down to even a Stewart and moving the funds elsewhere, you move down to like Brereton Diaz or Grant, and so you're always within reach of going back. Particularly if you rule out those higher priced Watford guys, which I would at this point until the window is closed. But some of these other options, you leave yourself then that potential route back, that easy route back, as and when he starts firing. But I think those are your two options. Either you decide you're going without and you don't worry about your route back, or you potentially leave yourself a slightly shorter jump back to his price.
Yeah.
But either way is fine. If you're gonna if you're gonna take the move to get rid of him, you've just got to decide which approach you're taking if you do. But FPL Full of Ham has asked us, who are the best 3 Coventry assets to have in place ready for when they have their double game week? Dan, do you want to take this one?
Victor, I'm not sure they've got 3 assets, have they? Now Hair's not there. It's probably Bidwell if he's guaranteed to play. And Panzo, but that feels just because he scored 2 goals and got a dodgy assist. I don't think I'm going to have. I think I'm only going to have maximum 2.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think whether there's anyone that's sort of in the team, but you know,
Unless they sign like a replacement for O'Hare, who's not Casey Palmer, and starts doing something, then maybe.
yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like, I think particularly because it could be a little while until that double comes up, I don't mind sort of getting on 1 or 2 ready, and then like when it actually happens, um, going to them, but
Yeah.
like going to the third. But I wouldn't be worrying about getting 3 in now, because you heard what happened when we tried to come up with the third option. I agree on Bidwell, Victor, assuming he stays, but once we tried to get to the third option, it is tough. I think Panzo could be a decent option, but how much of it is rooted in those early returns?
Yeah.
But we'll see. Mark Dorney has asked us, Which one would you keep out of Giannulis, Twine, or O'Hare? We used 2 free transfers with the setup of the rest of my team. Could afford to keep one, or should I just take the -4 to fix it all? So, Dan, what do you think on that?
I'd just take the -4 now.
Yeah,
Like, I
I
wouldn't
mean,
even
it
think
sounds
about it.
like Twine's not far away, but like I said, do you really want to be leaving that as a rolling decision for you? Like, not for
Yeah,
me.
it wouldn't even be a decision. I'd just take the -4.
Yeah. Rather than having to check every week, is he fit again? Is he fit again? Is he
Yeah,
fit again? But um, James Wood asked us, has Jamie got his bet on for Kiefer Moore as top scorer in the Premier League? Looks good. No, I don't think he does.
we'd all love it though, wouldn't we?
Oh yeah,
Bit of Kiefer.
yeah. For those who don't know, Jamie tipped Kiefer Moore before last season to be top scorer in the Championship, and as we all know, he wasn't particularly close. Uh, um, John Jacobson had also asked us a question. He said, how many game weeks do we give Birmingham before we have to take notice of them? He also asked our favourite type of tinned soup, lentil for him. Let's go with Birmingham first. How many more weeks until we take them seriously?
Look, I've seen them twice. I'm taking them seriously,
Yeah,
like, but I'm not convinced yet.
no. I
So
think give it another. I'd say probably 2 to 3, couple of
yeah,
games, and then you can look at bringing them in. Particularly because I think their game week 4 game is quite tough. So after that, maybe. Tin soup. You have any thoughts on tin soup?
I'm not a fan of soup. But if at a push, I'd probably just be boring and have tomato.
Yeah, I mean that's the sort of standby. I'm struggling to think of much more than that. So I
Like I
might
can't
come.
even remember the last time I had a tin soup.
Yeah, I might come back to you if I think of a more interesting option, a more interesting answer than that. But that's what I've got for you at the moment. Darren Auto Reclose asked us, "What are your thoughts on the following players?
I
Ahmed
love this
Hodzic,
question.
Omar Bamadeli, Syed Manesh, and Estupinian." Now, unfortunately, he asked this because he wanted Jamie to say all these names, and Jamie's not here. So we'll just acknowledge that and leave it at that. um, FPL Coke Zero asked us, given their start to the season, I know it's only 2 games, are any Blackburn assets on your radar now? Thinking Hedges, or if he stays, Brereton Diaz for Pukki. So I think we've covered them. Both
Yeah,
very viable. And
and
those are the main ones, I think, and the fullbacks.
yeah,
George FPL has asked us, is it too early for an overhaul? Have we seen enough to press go after game week 3 and gain advantage over the upcoming game weeks? Decent start, but a few issues going forward. So I think we pinpointed this beforehand as a possibility. With a number of these better teams who had a tough opening 3, that overhaul game week 4 was a possible option. It's not for me, but I can see the logic, having got 3 games of information. Some of these fixture swings for the likes of Sheffield United, Watford,
West Brom,
Burnley. I think there's another one, Middlesbrough. I think
West Brom.
West Brom. That like there is viability to an overhaul. Don't know what you think, Dan, about overhauling game week 4.
I think I'd just leave it. I think I'd rather take hits.
Yeah.
I'd rather take, I don't know, 2 -8s over a couple of weeks, to be honest.
Yeah, I think if you're overhauling at this point, the one thing I would say, I'd be slightly wary of overhauling while the transfer window's still open. But my personal view is unless you get into serious issues, you should only be overhauling as a positive move to attack rather than
Yeah,
sort of, I don't like my team, or there's 3 or 4 players I'd rather have, or whatever. But so I'd be a little bit wary of it at this point. Forever QPR has asked us, will Patterson start the next game? It's a good question. It's a very good question. He's got a
I
50-50
think
chance.
no, it's more than that because they were terrible last game.
No, but he's got a
So
50-50 chance. He'll either be on the bench or he'll start.
I don't know. I think it's higher than
Yeah.
that, to be honest.
Yeah, it'd be one of the two. He'll either start or he'll be on the bench.
I think if I had him, I would keep him.
Yeah.
Just, I think so.
Particularly as we've said about Blackpool, you don't want to sell him and then he starts and
Yeah.
you're missing out on that. FF Joel has asked us, would you prioritise selling Obafemi instead of Pirro if you owned both and had decided at least one needed to go? I think so.
Yeah.
I've got Obafemi and I wish I could sell him, so I would probably say he's the better one to go, unless money is a particular factor and you can do more by selling Pirro.
I don't know. I think I'd take the -4. I think I'd keep Pirro over Opemi.
Yeah. Ron Mukherjee has asked us what to do with Norwich assets. Watford, Sheffield United, Burnley, and Middlesbrough all have more appealing fixtures from game week 4 and players who are in form. So I think the key there for me is in the question. You're already giving yourself an extra week to look at them. I think if they're still disappointing, particularly the likes of Pukki, Campbell, if you're still not happy with what you're seeing after game week 3, then yeah, sure, some of these teams that have fixture swings, absolutely, you can move to them. Transfers don't have to be permanent. It's the other thing that, it seems silly to sort of just say, but it's also worth remembering. Transfers aren't permanent. You can sell these Norwich players, and even if after a couple of weeks it becomes clear you've made a mistake, you just go back to them. It's not a problem.
Also, their fixture run isn't terrible
No.
for Norwich. Like, they've got Hull this week. They then play Huddersfield, who've been terrible. Okay, Millwall's tricky, but they could do. Aaron's could score well.
Yeah.
Could get a clean sheet. They then play Sunderland, who have been conceding quite a few goals. You then Birmingham, Coventry, Burnley, Bristol City. That's still a good run.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah. I think this would be more about like a form question rather than a fixture question. But at that point, yeah, you sell them. If they turn it around, you just go back. It's not a problem. You know, you're not you don't have to sort of take some lashing or whatever if it turns out you were wrong, you just go back. It's fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wouldn't worry about it if you don't like what you've seen after the whole game. Then yeah, by all means. EC1 Hopper has asked us, first time playing, do the playoffs count or is it just regular season? Just regular season. Paul Cartwright said Norwich assets, especially Pukki, he's been hopeless. Yeah, we've kind of covered this. FPL Commander, who is better replacement for O'Hare? Freeman of Luton, he said to Dan, or Ogbene of Rotherham to me, or someone better up to 7.5.
I think there's better options than Freeman, especially from
Ogbene.
Yeah, he's good.
I
like, but we've got how many have we gone? We've basically gone through every team naming a great option between 6 and 5.5. Like,
pick one.
pick one, pick one you like,
Yeah.
and then hope it goes right.
Yeah.
There's so many. There really is.
Yeah, that's the thing, particularly up to 7.5. If I had to pick out, I'll pick out two as sort of the ones that I would probably recommend. I really like Bene. We all know about his
That heat, man.
that average position from game week 1, and Josh Brownhill, just because of that potential value in that Burnley team. Dan Parsons has asked us, is it worth the risk to go for Watford players that still might leave at the expense of Pukki? I think that question's been answered today. It's suddenly coming out that Sarr is in potentially advanced talks with Leeds, it just shows like you might get one game out of them. You might not even get one game out of them, particularly those two, Sarr and Dennis. So I don't think it's worth the risk personally. They might do great in that one game, and then you might have to sell them anyway. If you're willing to take the fact that you might only get one game out of them, you might get 0 games out of them, then maybe. But it's not for me. I'm guessing by the look on Dan's face, it's not for him either.
No. I've not been big on Watford anyway, especially the first 3 fixtures.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to be more sensible this year over the sort of players I go for, and Sarr and Dennis really haven't even entered my thinking.
No,
to be honest,
it's not that they're bad. It's just
yeah,
you want to know they're still going to be here.
Yeah.
So we've got Anth Carr, who has asked us. He's asked us Twine replacements, what to do with Swansea assets, and stick with Pukki. So Twine replacements, I guess it's much the same.
Yes.
You can go down depending on how much you have in the bank. You can go up to someone like Jed Wallace, then great, or Rashica even. If not, you go. I'd probably say go all the way down to one of these guys from between 5.5 and 6.
Yeah. There's just so many good options. Like we've named near enough a player from each team. Just pick their talisman, and he's basically between 5.5 and 6.
Yeah. What to do with Swansea assets? We've already said. Really. Dan says sell all of them. But bear in mind they're playing Blackpool, so maybe give them one more game and then ship them off.
Yeah, like if you have like double striker, you've got to sell one. But I wouldn't be like. I'm not sure I'd feel comfortable taking a -4 to get out and take them out this week.
And stick with Pukki, yes.
Yeah. No problem.
Pepsi Max has said the best replacements for Twine while he's out, covered. FPL Buddy, is it time to get on Watford players? We've covered that. FPL Wombat, what to do with Twine, who is the best replacement for him? We've covered that. Josh Jones, what to do with Twine and O'Hare? I don't think we've explicitly said that, but sell them. FPL Trini, Nick has asked for replacements for O'Hare, Twine and Piero. Covered that quite a bit. Waterproof FPL has asked us, is Ismail Assar a must? Well, given that it sounds like he's on his way, no.
Maybe an FPL.
Or, if you want to give me an extra placed Green Arrow, then yes, buy him. I need all the help I can get. And Follow the Trent has asked us Twine replacement and priority players to get in. Like I say, we've covered that quite extensively at this point. Not to mention the fact that we are an hour and 44 minutes into the podcast. So I think that is everything. We have covered all the issues, the games, the issues, the potential solutions. So that's all from us this week. We will let you know whether there will be a deadline spaces. I'm not optimistic from my end.
No, it's I work. I only done the other one because I finished early.
Yeah.
And I know last year we done them Thursday, but the pod's out Thursday. It's no point. Yeah. I'm guessing we'll probably record Sunday. I'm guessing, Angus. So it'll probably be out Monday.
There's not a Monday game?
No, it's midweek as well, so
yeah. So then we'll record Sunday. It'll be out Sunday night. So and then as Dan says, it'll be midweek, and we'll have to work out what the hell we're going to do. But it's all in full swing now, and thank you for listening. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Unbelievable.